but I really think that fluoride is, not drinking.
I mean, even
Not
what was it?
drinkable. Edible.
Nobel,
Well,
what
and
was
that's
the
the
Nobel
first time
Prize
I've really
winners?
heard that, except when I read a couple of those reports or the authors, some of the papers. And I think that is the pivotal point that we need to go with or play off of, is the fact that, and it may not be a fact, but presuming that it is that it's not something you want to ingest versus do the topical.
Well, one of the key turning points for me in this is, the toothpaste and the mouthwash all have those, big labels, it takes up half the back. If your kid eats this, call poison control. It's because of the fluoride in there. It's clearly
That's
not meant to be eaten.
There's no other.
Yeah,
there's
that's it.
there's
Alcohol, I do it too.
there's no other.
Alcohol is far less dangerous.
Okay, that's what it says on the toothpaste?
Yeah,
on the
it
Yeah,
says
it's called
poison
control
immediately. Immediately.
Only the fluoride toothpaste or just some of the others?
No, just the fluoride stuff.
Fluoride
Just the
toothpaste.
different.
He's got a
Okay.
bottle of toothpaste at his house. I
It's-
just looked at it.
I
No
got.
fluoride.
I changed my toothpaste when I found out about this. I was like, no more fluoride toothpaste, no more fluoride anything, as much as I can get away from it. So I bought Tom's of Maine, and they've been coming out with fluoride-free toothpaste for quite a while. And perfect. I mean, you don't want to like eat the whole tube or anything, but you can definitely swallow it without any sort of side effects. But it's
Well,
even.
tell that to a 3-year-old. The young kids,
Exactly.
because when my kids were first learning to brush, there's actually
Bubblegum
kid
flavored.
bubblegum
Yeah,
flavored
exactly.
kid stuff that
Yeah.
has
Oh, yeah.
no fluoride in it
Yeah.
whatsoever. It's got just
That makes about as much
Compact.
sense as bubblegum flavored cigarettes.
Yeah, but it was just.
Well, they have menthol cigarette in case you didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I remember fake cigarettes that were bubblegum.
Well,
Oh yeah,
Time ago.
Yeah.
little
one of
pops.
the information I'm reading right now, and this is the
Yeah.
legality of water fluoridation, how it's been
Yeah.
upheld by the courts. And
Yeah.
at the bottom, it said, water that has been fortified with fluoride is similar to fortifying salt with iodine, milk with vitamin D, and orange juice with vitamin. That's how that is being, I mean,
Portrayed.
that was looking,
Yeah.
One of the key points I think that statement right there especially is missed is, milk. You can get milk without vitamin D enhanced, you get
You can
the
get water
You
without
did-
fluoride too.
Yeah, but you have to go out
when
of your
the
way to do
municipal
it.
water supplies are fluoridated, then there's a lot of people who are left without the option.
Unless you want
Whereas
to go.
OJ is, you gotta go to the store and buy that.
Yeah, because like when we first
You do
started.
have options, that's the whole point though.
Yeah.
I mean, it might
There's
be
no.
similar to,
Yeah.
milk with calcium, milk with D,
Look for it.
and orange juice with the calcium and with the C. But indeed, you have the choice, because you can get it
Precisely.
squeezed or
Municipal,
strained
Yeah,
or
yeah.
without.
But see, the
or-
thing one of the things that got us when we first started looking at this though was, what you use the actual city water for, and in turn, how much of fluoride that you don't want, say you drink bottled water. Well, you still can, if you have a garden out back, spray your garden with, a hose, that the garden's gonna, bear fruit, which is gonna be chemically, it's gonna have
Laced
that.
with fluoride.
Yeah.
Which
And
that's
over
people
time,
realize.
I mean, a lot of people. There was one gentleman at the water
Yeah, water
board
yeah.
sewage thing. We were here first. Yeah, and he said, "Well, I've lived here for many, many years, and there's, I'm still here, and I didn't want to be rude, but at the same time, it's like, we don't know how many health issues this is actually linked to it. Because what I would like to have asked him was how many medications he was on, and how many, like, in some of these studies have shown there's a link to certain like thyroid problems and
And I
like
do
liver
know- I know
problems.
that's true,
Yeah. So it's things that people
It's an accumulative toxin. I mean,
people don't even think of some of these things, and it's one of those things that I always when I first heard about it, I'm like, I would like to do something about this before we get 20 years down the road and you hear on CNN or something like that oh, this may lead to some kind of cancer or something if enough is built up over time, because it does build up over time.
It's an accumulative toxin because when you ingest any sort of fluoride, more or less, particularly sodium fluoride, you absorb more or less 80 to 90% of it. So over time, your body particularly has a hard time telling the difference between sodium fluoride and calcium of any sort. So that's what happens
It kind
in
of replaces
That's what happens in your bones. It happens in your teeth. That's why stage 4 skeletal fluorosis, which is when your your body ends up replacing like 5 to 10% of your calcium in your bones with fluoride. You end up getting joint lock. Your it looks like osteoporosis, but it's fluorinosis is what they call it, fluorosis.
Yeah.
And you end up having this terribly painful degenerative disease, and if it doesn't go away overnight either. So when you ingest fluoride, you don't pass only 10% of it. That means that out of the 0.1 parts per million, you're retaining 0.9 parts per million. So every day you drink fluoride, more and more fluoride is building up in your body
And
over and over again for years and decades.
The one thing that was pointed out to me actually by someone that had commented on our article in the Dayton Daily newspaper, there was one comment that was made by someone who said, I understand the EPA has standards, but what doesn't make sense to me is how can you put a standard on how much poison to put in a water system? I thought that kind of made a good point because of what kind of chemical or poison it is. It's like how can you put a stamp on what's acceptable?
It's like the whole
what's
lead
not?
in the paint thing. We used to have lead in the paint in a bunch of houses, and it was found that the kids, especially from the pregnant women, it affected the fetal health of kids. When there was in fact such a small amount of lead in the paint that it seemed insignificant. It was measured in the parts per million. Well, evidently the lead builds up, and fluoride does too. It builds up slowly, so 0.1 parts per million might seem like a good idea, on a day-to-day basis, but add that up 365 days
Eventually, fluoride
a year.
is
It's a lot of parts per
considered.
million.
There's been several. I think there's an Australian, a national health survey for Australia, and the United States. There was some private research foundation that did a survey, and they found that fluoride, out of like 400 and some elements that they tested, or chemical compounds, which ended up being, some of them were the same level of toxicity, so it ended up being like 270 some odd levels of toxicity. Sodium fluoride, out of all those, was rated 20th. In Australia, it was rated 28th. So lead is somewhere in the 40s or 50s or something. And I think the EPA puts a toxicity level on stuff, like anywhere from 1 to 10. Or no, it's 1 to 5. Sorry, 1 to 5. And fluoride is considered a 3-4, like a 3.5, and lead is considered a 4 flat. So technically, everybody's saying fluoride's more toxic than lead, but yet lead's top level is like
everything.
1 part per billion or 0.6 or something, I think, whatever it is. Much lower, and yet we're ingesting a much more toxic element. And the numbers are right there in front of us, except nobody wants to pick up and run with
Yeah,
it.
and like a funny correlation we had though is I just I said, well, what the heck, because I have family in Tennessee, Livingston, Cookville area. So when I was down there last time, I thought, I'll just see about what if it's anything different down there. And one of the little tiny cities, Monterey, I found out that they didn't for it because most of them they drink they call it mountain water, just fresh off the mountain and stuff. And a lot of people there, my grandma has an aunt that's 103. They just seem to live longer. It's something about the mountains is what they write it down as. But I'm just wondering if maybe that could be something that over time just corrodes organs or.
See, people I think miss, there's no way to control optimum dosing level per person. They say 1 part per million is optimal dosing level. That's under the assumption that humans will consume a certain amount of water a day. That's just consuming your water. They didn't even take into account what you cook with, what you spray your vegetable garden with in your backyard, well, how much is in soda or anything. Your toothpaste. And then if you get fluoride treatments at the dentist, I've heard of kids having fluoride drops that they give the kids in the water, baby water that make your formula with, a lot of those have fluoride in it. So a lot of things, there's no way to control optimum dosing level. There's no way you can't tell a particular person how much water they're allowed to use per day and ingest. So I would guesstimate, I have no idea, but I mean, there's got to be a vast majority of people ingesting way more than the maximum containment level every single day, which even the EPA says that maximum containment level might or might not be actually safe. So if you're ingesting 8, 9 equivalent parts per million, that's highly toxic. That's extremely dangerous. And that's every day.